Hi, my name is Isabella Nazadi, and I read the book titled I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. Through this presentation, I'll be giving a deeper dive into the way rules played throughout the relationship. Jennette's mom, Deborah McCurdy, had cancer in the past. She never got to live out her dreams of becoming an actress because her parents never allowed it. She believed her husband was always having an affair on her, and more. There were so many aspects of her life that were never fully in her control. So it's possible that she put these rules on Jennette to feel like she has a grip on something. And to her luck, Jennette worshipped the floors that she walked on while her mom was alive. So this wasn't too difficult for her. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy is the heart-wrenching yet inspiring story of Jennette McCurdy's life growing up, living out her mother's dreams, even if they weren't her own. Jennette's family consisted of her parents, who were married, her brothers, her grandparents, and herself. While her brothers weren't too central of a role, these showed the differences in expectations that the parents had on them compared to Jennette. Since Jennette was the only daughter among 3 brothers, Deborah put a spotlight on her to be everything she wished she would have been. While her father was not completely absent, he doesn't play an active role in their lives because he's either working late or just doesn't seem to make time for his children. And when he did decide to make time for Jennette's 8th birthday, he spelled her name wrong on the birthday card. Her dynamic with her mom is one of the sole focuses of this book. From a young age, Jennette always found comfort in making her mother happy. Making her happy had quickly turned into giving Jennette the life that she felt she deserved living out her acting dreams. So, what started off as the last thing Jennette wanted to do with her life was instantly fueled by this fire to never disappoint her mother and be the best at whatever she puts in Jennette's path to keep her mother happy. This story took a turn for the worst when she began to fear not being enough for her mother's standards. This led to issues with obsessive-compulsive disorder, numerous eating disorders, alcoholism, unstable relationships, and sadly so much more. One of the main focuses of this book is Jennette's eating habits. When she was 11, she noticed her chest had started to develop. With concern, she went to her mother about it, who ultimately told her that the secret to staying small is calorie reduction and calorie restriction. Jennette began to see calorie restriction as a cheat code to looking younger so she could book more roles to please her mother. Deborah also had a fear of her kids growing up, which probably fell a bit into that as well. She would still shower the kids, even when they were 16, sometimes together too. Jennette was still in a booster seat at 14 years old and wouldn't even let her change her ice cream preference from when Jennette was a child. It wasn't until Deborah passed away from her cancer coming back that Jennette was able to get help and realize all of the abuse that her mother put her through. In the textbook, the family system is identified as a network of people who share their lives over long periods of time, bound by marriage, blood, law, or commitment, who consider themselves as family, and who share significant history and anticipated future of functioning as a family. By this definition, Jennette and Deborah McCurdy are bound together by the fundamental elements of a family system. They share a huge portion of their lives together. They're both bound by blood and ultimately consider themselves a family. Even though their dynamic can be unhealthy and complex more often than not, this book highlights the more dysfunctional aspects of their relationships, but regardless of one trading one's happiness for the other, leading to resentment, they consider themselves a family nonetheless. Looking a bit wider at the McCurdy group as a whole, her father was the sole provider while the mom took care of the kids in the early stages of Jennette's career. He never seemed to be able to connect with Jennette as much as she'd like. It was always pretty surface level with him. Her mother played a very authoritarian role in her life because essentially she had to play both parent roles in Jennette's life, so control was often the route taken. The lectures define this style of parenting as placing higher expectations on the kids and believing in complete obedience. This is where Deborah's desire to control starts to come in. This would still be considered a traditional nuclear family, even with a somewhat broken marriage and parents not always being there in the way that their children need. The most prominent family system throughout this book is the parent-child subsystem between Jennette and Deborah. The lectures mention how supportive messages from the parent to the child in these family subsystems are very important to building the child's self-esteem. Her mother seemed to only give her these supportive messages when Jennette did something to fulfill her wishes, and even then it still might not be enough for her. When the lack of positive messages are towards Jennette's independence, it caused many issues in her confidence and ability to speak up for herself in the workplace and in her romantic relationships. Jennette would find it hard to express herself because she was so used to having her mom's opinion matter more than hers. With that being said, Jennette faced moments of sexual abuse as she grew older, always trying to please everyone but herself. The concept I chose to analyze was how rules played a role in Jennette's journey. According to the textbook, family communication rules create stability by placing expectations on behaviors or interactions. It reflects that patterns that have become oughts or shoulds to control a certain aspect of someone's life. Rules pop up time and time again in their interactions. The textbook mentions how rules can be explicit or implicit. One of the explicit rules that Deborah placed on Jennette was surrounding her weight. Deborah would tell Jennette when she gains weight how it was getting out of hand and she needs to get back on a diet. This type of negative reinforcement led Jennette to finding a middle ground, an unhealthy middle ground. These behaviors changed once her mother passed away because no one was monitoring her meals or checking the scale with her 5 times a day. Those rules were not being enforced, so she began to find a guilty pleasure in eating all the food that she wanted. And instead of getting back to her usual calorie restriction after that, she would end up throwing up all that food after. She would purge her food 5 times a day, on average, to stay at her mom's ideal weight for her, even after she was gone. Another rule was how Jennette had to be an actress. The first touch point was in the form of a suggestion, but Jennette knew there was only one right answer to that question, and it was whatever Deborah wanted for her. When Jennette didn't do the best on one of her auditions because she couldn't cry on cue that day, which is what she was known for, she built up the courage to tell her mom that she didn't want to act anymore. Her mom began to implicitly enforce that rule by reminding Jennette, "You're being silly, acting is your favorite thing in the world." Then, after Jennette reassures her that her opinion is firm, her mom yells at her that she can't quit because this was their chance. This communication behavior got even worse when her mother's cancer came back because she started to force Jennette to pursue more of her dreams, like becoming a country music star, another thing she didn't want to do. A third example of the family communication rules is Jennette not being allowed to have much of a private life separate from her. Her mother had access to her diaries and her emails, and she was even monitoring her spending with the money that she makes for the family. Her mother would be at every audition, every acting lesson, every movie or TV set, even when it was not common or allowed for parents to be there. As a part of that authoritarian parenting style that tends to use punishment as a form of retaliation, if Deborah felt like Jennette's romantic relationship would threaten her power over her, she would attempt to sabotage the relationship. The removal of privacy in Jennette's life remained pretty consistent throughout the book from Deborah, but what changed was her response to these rules. So Jennette slowly developed a sense of resentment towards her mom and would begin to slowly push back as she got older. She would try to keep more parts of her life a secret to create distance and a sense of self-preservation. While this book had a lot of heavy topics to unpack, I already recommended it to all of my friends and family. It shed light on so many common issues that people face and often don't talk about. It shows the struggles for healing your traumas as well, but also how worth it can be. So when I was a kid, I always wanted to be famous, as many do. But this book really gets into what it's like actually for these childhood stars and the traumas that they face in the industry. Knowing Jennette McCurdy from the popular kids show iCarly, I feel that readers who have seen the show would find it easier to connect with the story more and get the most out of it. To wrap this up, I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy tells a compelling and heartbreaking narrative that ties in the possible negative implications when enforcing family communication rules, particularly the ones that were placed by her mother, Deborah. It shows how family systems can both create a sense of stability and inflict significant harm at the same time. Thank you.